we're looking at the Supreme Court, where all eyes should be trained next week when it holds a special oral argument on Thursday for 3 cases, all of them challenging Trump's Day 1 executive order attempting to end birthright citizenship, a right enshrined in the Constitution's 14th Amendment. The special hearing is so significant that C-SPAN has asked Chief Justice John Roberts to break a long-standing rule against permitting cameras in the courtroom and broadcast oral arguments at least this once. But here's the thing about this hearing. At its core, it's not really about birthright citizenship. It's about a whole lot of other things. In fact, the law and legal precedent is not on Trump's side here. A Reagan-appointed judge who was the first to block the order said that in 4 decades, he, quote, can't remember another case where this question presented is as clear as this one. Instead, this is about the multiple nationwide injunctions against Trump's order and whether the court will decide to empower lower courts in holding back Trump or, alternatively, give the president more leeway to disregard their rulings and implement his policies, even if they are deemed illegal or unconstitutional. Joining us now to discuss is Leah Littman, professor at the University of Michigan Law School and co-host of the Strict Scrutiny podcast and author of the forthcoming book, Lawless, How the Supreme Court Runs on Conservative Grievance, Fringe Theories, and Bad Vibes. Also with us is Eddie Glaude Jr., MSNBC political analyst and Princeton University professor. So thanks to both of you for joining us. The first question I have for you is, Leah, let's start with you, actually. How emboldened do judges actually feel to rule adversely against the Trump administration at this point?
I think the lower courts have shown they are willing to rule against the Trump administration. I think the Supreme Court has been more hesitant to do so. But I actually think in the birthright citizenship case, I fully expect the court to rule against the Trump administration. And when they do so, I don't think we should give them a ton of credit. I don't think we should forget how they actually cleared the way for Donald Trump to become president and emboldened him in many respects. In the immunity decision, after all, they effectively told him, you are above the law. As Justice Sotomayor wrote in her dissent, with respect to the president's official duties, they've made him a king above the law. And even on the 14th Amendment, they said states can't actually enforce the 14th Amendment against Donald Trump to keep him off the ballot. And so this is why when we ask, where did Donald Trump get the strange idea that he is above the law and doesn't have to follow the 14th Amendment, I think it's the Supreme Court. And as I write in the book, they have used the law to enable lawlessness.
So basically, what Leah's saying is they created this problem with this king of sorts, and now they have to find a way to rein him in, because this hearing on Thursday, it's not about birthright citizenship. It is much more than just birthright citizenship.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I'll leave it to the lawyers to really look at the Supreme Court. But I think if we widen the aperture, we might need to ask ourselves the question: what's motivating the assault on birthright citizenship? What's the connection to a broader project that's animating Donald Trump's presidency? I mean, when we think about the 14th Amendment, we have to understand that it's in some ways a response to the Dred Scott decision. It's bound up with what do we do with these former slaves as they make their way into the body politic? How do we understand them? What do we do with the Freedmen's Bureau and the like? How do we understand immigrants whose children are born here? That's the Long Ark case. This is bound up with great replacement theory. This is rooted in a deep sense of paranoia that the country's changing. Of course, I don't think the court's going to side with the Trump administration, but we have to understand what's motivating this and call it out for what it is.
How strange is it to you that we have had multiple justices speak out about the assault on the courts, sort of signal in a way, it seems they're trying to send a message to this administration? I mean, we've heard from Sotomayor, from Chief Justice Roberts. I mean, how odd is that to have them speaking out in that way?
So let me start with Chief Justice Roberts' statements. I think, honestly, I take those statements more as a PR move to get some good press for the court than I do something serious. This is, after all, the author of the immunity opinion. He is also a chief proponent of the unitary executive theory, which gives the president and the president alone these sweeping powers and has authorized the president to fire officials in violation of federal law. So I view the chief's statements more as...
It rings hollow for you.
It rings a little hollow for me. He is one of the best politicians in Washington, and he knows how to work the media.
So some legal experts that I have spoken to have said that the real thing the judges are tiptoeing around is holding anyone in contempt. So it's not so much that they want to say, they're afraid to say what you're doing is illegal. It's what do they do when the Trump administration or its representatives disobey an order. What's your read on that? It seems like at some point they will have to go down that road, the judges.
Yes, so I think they are absolutely hesitant to find Trump administration officials in contempt. Even Judge Boasberg, the judge in the Alien Enemies Act case, his ruling, which found probable cause that there were members of the administration who were in criminal contempt of the order, gave the officials the opportunity to basically walk back any contempt finding by reasserting custody over the men who were wrongfully sent to El Salvador. So he was still providing them with some sort of safety valve to avoid him having to try to do anything after finding them in contempt of the order. So I think, yes, they haven't yet been hesitant to rule against the administration, but they are a little bit nervous to find the administration officials in contempt.
Professor Gilad, I want to go back to something that you were saying about what is animating the ideology between the administration in this moment. And obviously, there's a growing concern that there is a direct attack on the rule of law in this country, whether it is beginning to kind of test the limits of what they can get away with after a court order, or whether it is just an outright assault on the powers of the presidency, or whether it's putting in U.S. attorneys that are favorable to the president, basically doing the president's work. I wonder how you see that playing with what you outlined earlier in the Supreme Court's role in where we find ourselves. When you have an attack on the rule of law in this country, what does that leave us with as these systems that we felt are supposed to hold us up begin to erode?
Well, I think those systems are cracking. I mean, of course, the courts have held the line in the way that they have. But I think we hit the constitutional crisis with Garcia in an interesting sort of way. And I think part of what we're seeing and witnessing is the effect of a unitary theory of the executive. That unitary theory has a direct impact on how we understand the role of the courts, how we understand the role of the Congress. And you have a fellow who's in the office who's not committed to basic norms of democracy, motivated by a whole host of things, three in particular: greed, selfishness, and hatred. And how those three things evidence themselves, how they are operationalized in actual policy, we're experiencing. I think as a democratic republic, we're on the precipice right now. And we're looking at the particulars, but we need to understand the nature of the danger, it seems to me.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, while you're here with us, Eddie, what you thought of the images of Ras Baraka being arrested yesterday.
I can't say what I thought on national television.
Could you do your best to translate it?
I be damned. Here we are, right? The line has been crossed. The state has evidenced its willingness to exercise power in this coercive way. And it doesn't matter if you're an elected official or or a woman holding your child in Worcester. They will deploy the power of the state. And it's deeply, deeply disturbing, and it's scary as hell.
And these men, they were masked, the Icemen, and the imagery of what it was and what it conjures up is not lost on people in this country. They know exactly what they're doing, because we were actually speaking to members of Congress earlier who told us they had been in the facility for 90 minutes before that incident, which I think is shocking to most of our viewers to know they had been granted access, but then at some point something happened in which these ICE officials decided to make a statement and make a spectacle and go after the mayor of Newark.
Yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say not to bring this back to the Supreme Court, but I do think they have a
there
lot
are
of
threads and
responsibility
connections here.
Because going back to the immunity decision with respect to the unitary executive theory, the Supreme Court said the president has absolute power over investigations and prosecutions. And even if the president is using investigations and prosecutions for personal gain, political retribution, that doesn't matter. And I think that truly emboldens law enforcement officers, including the ICE officers, to be aggressive, to stage these acts of intimidation and harassment, to get these images and terrorize people to advance the administration's agenda.
All right, Leah Littman, the book Lawless is out now. Make sure to get it. Leah, thank you so much for joining us. Greatly appreciate it.